Welcome to Backpass with Ras, and this is the Euro special. And today we are going to feature a team that's quite popular in this part of the world. The team is always wearing very bright colored jerseys. Um, it's Holland. It's Holland, Hollandia. And with me on the show today is my good friend, current Balestier Khalsa head coach, Mr. Peter de Roo, a Dutchman himself. So no better person to speak about Holland with than the man himself from Holland. How are you doing, Peter?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, Peter. So I hope before we go on to this episode, talking a bit about SPL, the Singapore Premier League, wish you all the best this season.
Thank you.
Okay. And so now let's go to your nation, your home nation, Holland. We'll speak about, of course, we'll start off with talking about Euros from the past, that is from the 90s all the way to the noughties. And then we'll speak about the upcoming Euros and previewing the Dutch team as well. So let's start with Euro 92 first, the one held in Sweden. So Holland entered into this tournament as holders. They had won their first ever international tournament as a senior men's team 4 years before in 1988. So before we talk about 92, Peter, let's talk about the Euro 1988 team. How highly regarded is it in Holland?
Actually, very highly regarded, and it still is considered as probably one of the best teams that we've ever had. I think that's also because they won the Euros at that stage, because I do think there were before, but also after, some teams that probably come very close or maybe were even better. But maybe it's also because of that golden generation of those three playing at AC Milan at the time, Gullit, Van Basten, Rijkaard. Yeah, and it was next door in Germany, so it came all together, at away soil against our arch enemy. So
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about that. Winning in the grounds of your arch enemies, that must have made it sweeter for the
yeah,
Dutch.
that was massive in Holland. I remember I was about to sign my first professional contract in 1988, and at the time at the time of the final, I was actually working somewhere, and the televisions obviously were on, and the terraces were all orange everywhere where you could watch, and in Germany, it was like an orange sea, and yeah, it was. Obviously, winning it after a few disappointments a decade before in World Cups, we thought it actually belonged to us at the time. Yeah, I remember that.
All right, okay. That's nice. And now going on to Euro 92, the tournament in Sweden. So Holland had to qualify for this tournament. They didn't get automatic qualification as holders, and they qualified. And also got to remember that in Euro 1992, there were limited spaces. So there were only 8 teams that qualified for the tournament. So Holland entered into this tournament, got out of their group stage quite easy. They even beat Germany. And at that point, Germany were the world champions, the reigning world champions. 2 years before, of course, they had the very infamous game in Italy between Germany and Holland with the spitting incident of Rijkaard and Rudy Waller. So it must have been sweet for Holland to beat Germany on the way to topping the group.
No, it was, and it was good for confidence as well, because it was a generation of players that probably needed a little bit of refreshing. And by memory, I think it was the last big tournament of Van Basten.
Yeah.
And probably also Gullit, because I think he didn't go to the World Cup '94.
Yeah.
And there were a few older ones like Van Tichelen still playing, and it was for the first time I think Bergkamp came to the scene. So the first player, and Brian Roy from the next generation, born in actually my generation, born
Okay.
in '70. Um, But obviously, and some players getting a bit older, but still a good age for to win. And I think we were favorites. We had a good we had a good first round,
Yeah.
and yeah, then we had to play against the team that they called off from the beach,
Yeah.
Denmark.
Yeah, that's one. Okay, going into that game, first of all, just going into that game, were you all like confident that okay, we're gonna beat Denmark? We're gonna be in the final.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that was on people's minds. If you so easily go through the first round and you have the quality in the team that you have in terms of attacking, but also defending and in midfield, it was a very complete team in terms of having the ball and not having the ball. And some good players coming through, and then yeah, play a good first round like that. I do think that we probably were a little bit overconfident.
Mm.
Actually, knowing that Denmark obviously didn't qualify and came straight off the beach just a couple of weeks before. I think that had to do with Yugoslavia in the war
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so it had all the ingredients to maybe be a little bit complacent and already thinking about the final.
yeah. And I mean, the group that Denmark came through, in that group, they had England and France, and those two were probably favorites to go through. But instead, it was the two Scandinavian teams, Denmark and Sweden, that went through, and then Denmark were facing Holland in the semi-final. So just let's talk about the semi-final. A 2-2 draw, went to penalty shootout. Maybe share your memories of that semi-final.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't remember that much about it. I know that we didn't play well, and it was not a game of like, oh, we were unlucky. Yeah, and for me, the biggest thing that I remember is, of course, a penalty miss from Van Basten
Yeah,
because I don't think we've ever witnessed that.
yeah, correct, true. That's it's one of those unusual ones. We've seen it before in international football where a player, so potent from the penalty spot, suddenly in a penalty shootout, they miss. We've seen it like
Yeah,
Zico has missed it, Platini has missed it here now in Boston.
yeah, and yeah, and I know we definitely not in the 90s have a good record with penalties, but Van Basten was always the exception. So
Yeah,
it
true.
was yeah, it was
Ironic.
quite awkward to see him miss, and yeah, I think that was, if there was ever a chance that we probably should have win it again, it was in '92,
Mm.
because it was one of those tournaments where there is always something in the Dutch camp internally, or players, or it's players and coach, or on the outside. But this was actually tournament where there was hardly any issues.
Mm.
Usually, we become our own worst enemy during tournaments. But this was a tournament where there was not really anything going on. So, I mean, the atmosphere was good, I remember. And yeah,
Yeah, so disappointment there to have lost. Now,
yeah.
4 years on, you spoke a bit about this already, but 4 years on in England, Euro 96, this was a good generation of Dutch players coming through because Ajax had just won the Champions League and there were a lot of, these young Dutch players coming through. So you expected a lot from this Dutch team, but I believe there were some issues in the background.
Yeah, there were actually a lot of issues, and I think that the history behind those issues came actually from Ajax internally. Ajax had a good couple of years. I think they just won the Champions League,
Yeah,
uh, and they had Kluivert, Seedorf,
that
Davids, all
it's
guys coming through. And at the time, I don't think Seedorf was still at Ajax. I think he was already at Madrid. But within Ajax, there were issues about payments, about salary. So guys like Blind, um, the brothers De Boer, Overmars, all these guys were on very big salaries compared to actually the dark players. But the dark players probably also forgot that they were still very young. Seedorf at the time was only 20. Kluivert was is from 76, so he was only 20. So there were issues about salaries, and that they took that into actually the national team camp, where was a very clear split between the white players and the dark players. They wanted their own food, they wanted their own table. So in terms of communication, it wasn't very good, and it was inherited by Hiddink, I think, at the time. And yeah, and in the first game, I think he benched Davids. Davids wasn't playing. And straight after the game, Davids says that openly against the press that Hiddink listened too much to the older players, and he mentioned De Boer and Blind. Um, and was very critical on Hiddink. Hiddink, I think, did not have any other option than to send him home. So after game one, we already sent a player home. Yeah, and then a game later, Seedorf started complaining after a win that he should play in a different position, and yeah, it was all in all. And then I think the third game was a massive
Yeah. So,
punishment from England.
yeah. Because I expected,
Which
okay, England.
later, which later, funny enough, got back to me very, very hard because after the Euros, I signed a contract in England.
Okay, okay.
So I played, and of course, winning 4-1 from Holland was a big thing at the time for England.
Yeah.
So I remember playing a pre-season game in England, and at some point, I do a shimmy against an opponent or whatever, and he hits me very, very hard from the back, almost breaks my legs. And I
Mm.
remember I'm on the ground, and the referee stands over me and he says, "Welcome back, son." So I'll never forget. Yeah, but anyway, um, I think we still made it though to the
Yeah, to
next
the quarterfinals. Yeah, you
uh,
did.
yeah, and that's where our journey in European cups and penalties started. I think
Again, yeah, against
Uh,
France.
that was a very disappointing tournament. I think, and France at the time had a decent team though. So for us, it was a little bit of a decent comeback, and it showed you the quality we actually had. But all in all, yeah, that was a very disappointing tournament. Yeah,
Yeah, certainly that game against England was one that stood out for me because, okay,
yeah,
I know England versus Holland. I expected maybe a closer score, maybe a draw. It would have ended in a draw or something, or much closer score. But 4-1 for Holland to get thrashed 4-1 by England, I think that was a big
yeah,
for for the English was a big statement to make during a tournament that they are hosting. But
yeah.
for the Dutch, I think a big shock. We didn't
No,
expect it.
it is, and you can't even call it undeserved because I think they completely outplayed Holland at the time.
Mm. And then you went to quarterfinals. Quarterfinals drew against Holland, France. Sorry, 0-0, and then on the penalties again, like as you mentioned, you got knocked out in the quarterfinals.
Yeah,
And then let's move on to the tournament that you hosted, Euro 2000. You co-hosted. First time a nation, or rather, first time we've had this where two nations have co-hosted a tournament because this was before the World Cup. So Euro 2000, Belgium and Holland co-hosted a tournament. You had one part of it. And I think this time you also, confidence was high. You're probably one of the favorites to win the tournament.
yeah,
Went through the group stage quite swimmingly well.
yeah,
You beat the French in the group stage, and they were reigning world champions. So similar
yeah,
to Euro 92 then, because there as well you beat a reigning world champion.
yeah,
But I remember that last game where you played France in the group stage. It was just a dead rubber. Both teams had already qualified. Both
yeah,
teams fielded their reserves. And yeah, but then yeah, Holland still did win that. And then when you came to the quarterfinals, you smashed Yugoslavia 6-1. That just amplified the expectations on Holland that you're gonna win this. Now,
yeah,
this is a question I want to ask you because this is something I believe. personally. I don't know. You come from a different perspective as me. I'm a fan. You are a football professional in the sense that you've been a player before, you've been a manager, a coach, or rather, you are a manager, coach right now. So my belief is, I don't know whether this comes from superstition or from being a fan of Italy for a long time. It's just that I feel that during tournaments, it's important for teams to pace themselves. So when you get to, you do enough to get through your group, do enough to get through the rounds. The time where you really need to hit your peak will actually be the semifinals and the final itself to win it. That's what I believe. And I felt that at that point, I think Holland had reached the peak in that quarterfinal against Yugoslavia. So, what is your perspective on it as a professional in the game?
Now, I understand what you mean because tournament football um, it can be it's a heavy load for players. You need to back up. So if you can make substitutions, which means if you go through games pretty easily, or you can win games, let's say an 80%. Um, then obviously it means the sharper you maybe are towards the end, or at least fitter. But I also think that is not the case for any team. It depends a little bit on the experience of the players.
Mm,
Um, so you always have players that can play the occasion rather than the game, and
mm,
get their adrenaline and their energy from other places as well, and they know they can switch it on. But there's also a lot of players that actually can't do that.
mm,
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Um, but that is also a little bit dangerous. I'm also not a big fan of, even if the opportunity is there to all of a sudden. So if you're already qualified and just put 10 other players in there, my experience is that it usually breaks momentum as well. Uh,
mm.
so yeah, not a big fan. But look, you say that the game against Yugoslavia was very good. By if I remember correctly, it should have never been penalties against Italy in the first place because I
Yeah,
think Holland absolutely dominated that game as well.
yeah, yeah. For long periods, because and also Italy were playing for with a man down from the first half itself. So it was all back against the wall for Italy.
Yes.
And so in that semi-final, you feel Holland were unlucky?
Yeah, I don't like the word unlucky. I mean, if you don't uh, take your opportunities, or you don't score the goals, or you don't create whatever it is, I think you always have to look at yourself, and I think it's too easy to say unlucky. We just didn't take our chances when they were there. We should have managed that game and brought it home way earlier, and we didn't.
Mm. You missed
Uh,
two penalties as well during the
Yeah,
90 minutes.
if there were quite a few players who also didn't want to take a penalty because, if Jaap takes a penalty, you're in trouble. I think they're still looking for that ball.
Yeah, still looking for that ball. It's still not landed yet.
No. So, but at least he took responsibility. But I remember from the time afterwards that yeah, a lot of players were very uncertain to take the penalty. Also, maybe because the two tournaments before, because it
Mm.
became a little bit an issue. If it becomes penalties, Holland will never win. It became an issue in Holland as well. People talk you sometimes into a problem, and whether it's there or not, you do hear it, and it goes inside your head.
Yeah. So this kind of problem with penalty shootouts kind of similar with England because it's very famous that England
Yeah,
always struggle on penalty shootout.
yeah,
And it
true.
seems like now we've seen a pattern now here that Holland has been struggling with penalty shootouts as well.
It almost became like just like England. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think it often enough, if you talk about it, yeah, it will happen. Yeah, for sure.
What do you put it down to? This record, poor record on the penalty shootout.
Yeah, I have no idea. I honestly don't have any idea because I'm not sure. But I think in that game even Frank de Boer missed a penalty, right?
Yeah,
Well,
in
he
90
never
minutes. Yeah,
he never missed a penalty either.
yeah,
Jaap Stam, I've never seen him. Um, I've
take
never
a
seen him
penalty.
take a penalty, and he would be definitely number 11 on the list normally. Also because yeah, I know him a little bit. He's definitely not the type of person who would step up then.
Hmm. Okay.
But I do know him well enough to know if there's a lot of people who say no, then he would say, okay, then I'll do it.
Oh,
Yeah, and but yeah,
okay. So that's Euro 2000. Another European Championships gone by, defeated by penalties. The jinx of the penalty shootout hanging over the Dutch head. Now go to Euro 2004, 4 years later in Portugal. This one, I think, good generation again. Again,
yeah,
you've gone through all the way to the semi-finals
yeah. I
and you
think
lost.
it was the period where Robin Snyder, Van der Vaart, these guys all came up
Yeah,
a little
correct.
bit combined with the generation before.
Benisteroy and yeah,
Still, Kluivert was still there. I think Kluivert was on the bench that tournament because Van Nistelrooy was playing. But
yeah.
yeah, some young guys coming through. Yeah, definitely. Van Persie was there, I think, was injured. Um, but yeah, a lot of quality. Dick Advocaat was the coach. There was a lot of pressure on him. I can't remember why that really was already before, but then he didn't do himself a favor because in Holland is famous for the Robben
Oh,
substitution. I
okay.
think it was against the game they were leading, and he was already under pressure. And Robin plays very well. Well, he takes him off, and yeah, the whole team basically collapses. I think that was against Czechia. Not sure.
In the
Oh,
semi-finals,
was that might have been just
Portugal.
the group no, it was group stage where
Oh,
they got
okay.
lucky in the game after because they were depending on a result from Germany. They were
Oh,
basically out, only had a chance if they would win, and then Germany would either draw or lose. And that happened because we were more or less after that second game, that substitution that he made. And then I think we were 2-0 up, and then we lost 3-2 against Czechia
yeah,
after.
correct. That's right. That's right. Second game against Czech Republic.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and, yeah, and we were actually leading quite comfortable. And then he made that substitution, and we gave away the whole game. So that was another, a little bit on the fire for the media, for the coach. So yeah, a lot of pressure on the team, and then all of a sudden we did make it to the group because we won the last one, and Germany, I think, drew or lost.
Lost to Czech Republic.
Yeah, and then we had the game against Sweden. Finally, we win by penalties, but that could have gone either way in the game, if I remember correctly, and it was a very intense game. I remember both coaches saying I think the Swedish coach actually said to Advocaat, if we would have won, we probably would lose the next one because this has taken a toll out of our players, and I think
Mm.
this is going to happen to you too. And that happened because the next one was Portugal, and
Yeah,
yeah, there was nothing left in the tank. I remember. It
yeah.
was it was just
Again, against
too
the host as well. Yeah, with the home crowd.
yeah, yeah,
A bit too much for Holland. And so semi-final elimination.
yeah,
Actually, let's get to the last one first before I sum up this period for Holland. Euro 2008. I think this one, again, Holland got off on a flyer. They had the world champions in that group, Italy. You had the runners-up in that World Cup, France in that same group. It was a bit of a group of death because Italy, France, Holland were in the group. The third team was Romania. Romania wasn't a George Hagi's Romania. It was a much weaker Romanian team. But Holland smashed Italy, smashed France, got out of the group stage quite easy.
yeah. It was definitely a group of death. I still remember the draw, and then and then seeing that you play against France and Italy. Usually, when Holland goes to a European Championship, you look at it and you think, okay, well, at least the next round should be possible. But this was one where you thought, oh, okay, that's going to be difficult. But they played very well.
Yeah, they
Uh,
did.
I think Van Basten was coach, and he left Van Bommel and Seedorf out because of some issues. But some other players stood up. I remember Snyder having a very good first round, if I'm
Yeah.
correct. I was actually at some games in Switzerland, uh,
Okay.
and so straight after that first round, you know how that works. Holland was favorite number one, and then we come up to our former coach hitting with Russia,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was it.
That was it. Yeah, true. That's also a surprise because the Russians came out of nowhere, played Holland. You needed Van Nistelrooy's late goal to tie it up with 90 minutes, and then in extra time, Russia just took over and beat Holland. Was
Yeah,
it a
to be
case of
honest,
being
I remember being already a little bit worried about that game because
okay?
I know the coaching staff, Raymond Verheijen with Guus Hiddink. I know what they did in South Korea when they had a long preparation time, and
Mm,
in terms of fitness, and they can actually create like a machine, and he had actually long preparation with Russia, and
mm,
and maybe not all high flyers in terms of their reputation or name, but obviously all decent players. And so no, that was never going to be an easy game, to be honest.
okay. No, we thought
And
it was going to be.
I
Yeah.
also remembered um, because I was in Switzerland, one of the players, Boularouche, his daughter was
Um,
born early and then died the night before the game.
oh dear.
So that was I remember Van Basten going to the hospital, some of the players, that was the night before that game, or maybe even in the morning of that game. And then they decided that he still wanted to play. But yeah, that was something that happened the day before that game. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, that must have had an impact on the players and mentally.
Yeah, because she was obviously pregnant, but she was there, not and all of a sudden the night before, signs of maybe an early birth, and that went wrong. So that was yeah, obviously that has a big impact on a group that's so long together,
Mm.
and we're so close, to be honest. So yeah. Um, but okay, I can't take anything away from hitting in Russia. To be honest, I remember in that game, I think it was fair enough. It wasn't like unlucky, like I said before. But
All right, so that's the end of the this recap period. But I got to say, when I was doing this, I did a bit of research. Of course, I've followed most of the Euros by watching them from '96 at least. Um, and I got to say, Holland's got quite a good record. They've managed to reach quite a few semi-finals. In total, you've reached one, two, three semi-finals out of one, five tournaments, which is a good record. Three semi-finals out of five tournaments. You've never got knocked out in the group stage in this period of time, always at least gone through to the knockout stages. Overall, would you feel disappointed that they didn't add to the Euros they won in 1988?
yeah, because when you look at the 90s, and also early 2000, I think there were probably two occasions where I really thought that we had the best team. And but in these tournaments, not always the best team wins. To be honest, from the last 20 years, I can remember one World Cup where I really thought, yes, the best team clearly the best team also won it, and that was in 2010 with Spain.
Mm.
You play 7 or 8 games, and it has to be 100% in every single game, and that's always a little bit difficult. But it's definitely in two tournaments. I think we had the potential to win it, and in the other ones, yeah, you have a chance, but it can go either way. But I thought in 92 and 2000 and 2000, yeah, we probably should have gotten a bit more. 96, no. In 2004, yes, it's quite acceptable as well. But yeah, especially 2092, probably
Mm.
the best team at the time. But yeah, that doesn't mean you win it. It's tournament football, and that also that requires a different mindset and a different mentality, where some of other teams used to be very good at, and some are still are. They might not be the best team, but put them 6 or 8 weeks in a room, and then oh sorry, in in a hotel, and they deliver.
Yeah.
And I don't think Holland usually is one of them. There's, there's always something when you put Dutch people too long in the same space.
All right, moving on now. Looking forward to this upcoming Euros. First of all, let me ask you, let's preview the Dutch team. What do you feel about the Dutch team's chances in these Euros?
Um, they're definitely not favorites in my opinion. I
Do you
think
think
that
dark horses? How about dark horses?
no, it could be because on the day they can get a result against most of the teams. I'm convinced of that, and you saw that in the last World Cup, where I don't think we have the same quality, but and also probably in the Nations League when on the previous stint of Ronald Koeman, yeah, it was a similar group of players, and actually some young guys came through who are actually quite good. But I think still the problem is that yeah, up front I don't think it is world class.
Workhorse.
No, no, no. Yeah, I mean, I think defensively, you have so many names that play at the highest level and the absolute world top. But up front, I think it's a little bit thin, and it's definitely not world class. No.
Mm. Yeah, certainly. So, any player that you are looking forward to watching for Holland?
No, well, I obviously not living in Holland already for 15 years. Um, you try to follow it as much as possible, but for instance, for me, what was a very positive surprise was the guy that plays in Italy, Tijani Reinders. I
Uh,
actually never heard of him
mm,
till I saw him play 6 or 7 months ago, and I'm thinking, wow. That's quality, and there's some other guys that do very well in Italy at the moment.
Cup minus is one.
Koopmanis is doing very well at the moment. Nathan Ake is always performing for City, and but yeah, I really and lately actually Gakpo doesn't do too bad, but that is. Yeah, I really think, like I said before, I think it's a little bit too thin in quantity, but also in quality up front
Mm.
to really you know um, do a lot of damage, to be honest. But
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, maybe dark horse. Why not? I mean, they can all play, and if it clicks and it works, and they have a good couple of weeks, why not?
Mm.
And to be honest, when you look at all the other teams, I really don't think that there is a clear favorite. I mean, you can talk about France when you look at the quality they have with Mbappe that can change the game. But yeah, look at their results. That's not been convincing. Germany home soil, but their results have not been convincing when you really look at recent results.
Mm.
Um, I think probably England is one of the teams that has been performing reasonably well over the last 4 years, and the most consistent of them all. Uh,
Mm.
plus Spain probably.
Yeah. And who are you tipping to win this tournament?
Now, yeah, I think in the end, England is you know is sort of always up there, but when the tournament starts, it usually goes wrong, except the last couple of times. But then when you look at a really tournament team that has been done well lately as well, and is bringing some young players through, I probably would say maybe Spain.
Okay. And any team that you would say is one to look out for, a dark horse in this tournament?
Um, I wouldn't. I don't. I think they might in the end miss some quality, but I think um, uh, Austria is a different team with this coach.
Yeah,
I'm
I
looking
I
forward to
believe
watch
so.
them.
Yeah, I think Austria is one to look out for, and Austria is in the same group as Holland.
Yes. Oh,
So
that would be. No, I look forward because I'm always interested, obviously, in Holland. But there's also a few coaches that always trigger me a little bit more to enjoy to watch. And I heard and I saw some good things of Austria.
mm,
Same guy that was a mentor of some very good coaches, but failed himself more or less at Man U. But everybody did. So. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to see how that goes. Yeah.
okay, all right, Peter. Thanks for your time and sharing your memories as well of the
No worries.
Euros.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but but it's good to to relive it for a little bit like this. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Before I go, just one thing. In that period of time that we spoke about, who has been your favorite Dutch player?
Ooh. So you more or less let's say the 90s, huh?
Yeah, 90s and the noughties.
Yeah, probably that generation, that first generation that you talk about. He, I would say Van Basten, but very close because Van Basten, in my opinion, is special. But
Mm.
and he was probably yeah. It's a pity he had the end his career at the age of 27 at his
Yeah,
peak because he was phenomenal in my opinion. But as a complete footballer, I was always a big fan of Frank Rijkaard.
Frank Rijkaard. Yeah, that's good name to put out there. Underrated. Not many people speak about him.
No,
Like,
and I
yeah,
think he was extremely important for AC Milan, for the Dutch national team, and actually for as an older player coming back to Ajax for with all these young guys winning the Champions League in '96 or '95. And the next generation, um, yeah, probably, yeah, big fan of Dennis.
Days
And
Bergkamp.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. That's nice. So once again, thanks, Peter. All the best to Holland in this tournament.
Thank you, thank you.
I hope you enjoy yourself
All
and
the best with Italy, eh?
yeah, we'll speak about Italy later. but
Okay.
but
Okay. No.
yeah. See you around at the games and all the best in your season, man.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.